Command Point now has merch. Link in the description. Warzone Studio was kind enough to send out a couple of their battle mitts for us to review, and I have to say, you guys, I absolutely love them. The mats we received have the kill team layout on them, making it quicker and easier to place objectives and terrain pieces to create a good play experience. The mousepad material the mats are made from is an upgrade from the foldable cardstock boards that you are used to seeing come in kill team boxes. Warzone Studio are even helping support the channel by giving us a kickback for each order placed using the link in the description below. So make sure to check them out, and thank you to Warzone Studio for sponsoring this video. Hello everybody and welcome to Command Point, and welcome to the 9th day of Kill Team, where we are talking about a very special, fun faction that's been on my mind a lot lately. We're going to be talking about the Hearthkyn Salvagers, and I am joined by second place from the New York Open, running Hearthkyn Salvagers. I have Eldon here. Eldon, how's it going?
Things are going pretty well. Just winding down to the end of the season, looking forward to something on the things that are coming up. But as far as things are going, just no complaints really.
Awesome. So I've heard very good things about you as a Hearthkyn player. I've never played you before, or I don't think we've ever been to the same tournament before, but you had a really good showing at the New York Open, and I'm super excited to talk about the faction with you. So, I mean, I guess for somebody that is kind of getting into Hearthkyn Salvagers, whether, they're looking to play a new faction, maybe the dwarves just are super interesting to them. How would you describe the play style of Hearthkyn?
The play style of the Hearthkyn, it's it's interesting. They kind of they begin as like you begin looking at them as like a take and hold kind of archetype, kind of a slow plotting defensive team. You know, if you played compendium teams at all, you played, the Death Guard team that's in there, that a team that's focused more on defense than offense. The thing that Hearthkyn can do that kind of makes them stand out from other, take the midline and hold kind of teams, is that the Hearthkyn have the ability to do really focused bursts of offensive power. They have a deceptively they have a deceptive ability to flex their threat range and really act, and have moments of force amplification. And it's playing around those moments that I think really that separates Hearthkyn from other teams.
Nice. Okay, that's a really good answer. So I guess for you personally, as a competitive player, what, or even as a, like, not even from the competitive lens, I don't know how much you play, but um, what about Hearthkyn kind of stuck out to you? Like, why do you like them?
I mean, they're dwarves in space. I mean, it really just kind of boils down that simply. Um, I've always been a big fan of, the kind of like, abhuman offshoots of the Imperium. I
Hmm.
find, space marines and humans in space less interesting, but space hobbits and space ogres and space dwarves, uh,
Yeah.
you know, that's bit, that's
Oh,
basically yeah. So
I'm a fellow enjoyer of the ratlings and like the weird like ogrins and
mhm.
dwarves are definitely a big part of that. So I get it. We had to wait so long for dwarves too. I mean, I felt like it was never going to happen.
And I'm glad it spent as much time in the oven as it did. I know the aesthetic is divisive. I really like where they landed.
And I do think, and I getting a little off topic here, I think that in 40K it seems like there's been a lot of the Votan have either been like way too weak or way too strong. But I think in Kill Team we've got a really good representation of it, and they feel really balanced and really fun.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree on that point. I think the
Oh yeah.
Hearthkin have a pretty significant number of breakpoints.
Uh-huh.
They compare really poorly to a lot of other teams. The problem with them is that I don't know what you would change. Like, there's not like a thing you can point to say that something that this is just something that doesn't work. Um, but it's really, it's they have difficulties playing the mission, like the way the map packs
For
are
sure.
designed. That kind of holds them back from really doing what they have solid stats, but it's difficult to play. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I mean, 6 objectives, especially on open board, I can see being a little tough for the dwarves. So I guess one thing I want to talk about especially because them being a slower team, kind of a plotter. How do you typically like to play on Turning Point One? Because I think when you're learning a new faction, that's one of the toughest things to kind of wrap your head around. how to get through that early game, what your win conditions are, and when to, switch up your game plan. So how do you like to play turn one?
I mean, 30.1, it really is all about the deployment.
Hmm.
You really need to have something that can shield your gunners so that they can be active threats on the board. Because if you're dropping all three of your gunners and conceal orders, you're basically just surrendering the board, which
Hmm.
isn't something you can really afford to do when you've got a 5-inch move. But so turning point one is a lot of times what you're going to be doing, it plays out of the scouting and strategic phase. So you really need to have an obscuring piece that you can get past. So with if you have a piece of heavy traversable terrain that you can pocket your gunners in, that's great. You can just play around that. But thankfully, when you have the ability to as dwarves, you can manipulate what is and isn't heavy. So if you have like a traversable thing, like an Octarius scrap wall or um, anything of that kind of vein, you can rampart that and create an obscuring pocket for you. So you can use things like your lugger and your jump pack warrior to go out and extend your ability to play the mission in turn one, while your gunners just kind of hang out and hope your opponent makes a mistake.
Oh, really interesting. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think about making it heavy so that they can hide behind it with conceal, but heavy is obscuring too. A lot of people I don't think about that a lot with when it comes to the rampart stuff. That's really interesting. Um, so I guess to turn the page a little bit and on a different topic, for you, whether it was at a tournament or whether it was at the local game store and people watching, what pops out to you when you think of the coolest Hearthkyn play you've ever made, like the flashiest moment you've had, where somebody watching the game might have been like, "Oh wow, this team is really cool. Like I kind of want to play this now."
So the thing, like Hearthkin, they have you can easily describe a lot of it's a gunner team. You're playing around your three gunner pieces, but the fact that all of the gunners they all have like equivalents in other factions, and then they have some extra rule that's tacked on, and a lot of times you can synergize those all together. So in one of the tournaments I was playing in the run up to New York Open, I played into Elucidian Starstriders on an open board, and it's turning point three, and I've got two grudges sitting on Vayne just from rolling them onto her, and then she's sitting on an objective because it's loot, so she has to move in and take an objective at the end of two. So she's sitting on two grudges. So I grudge her going into turn three, just in my strategic phase. And then I drop Toil Urns on the objective she's standing on, which treats any operatives within three of that objective as having an extra grudge. So Vayne is now sitting on functional four grudges, and I have initiative. So throw down, and I've got my plasma beamer, who's about 7 inches away from Vayne. Vayne's sitting on a conceal order she's hiding. So I have to use Ancestors Are Watching to reach her. But because she's got four grudges on her, and I'm rolling proximate fire at this point, so I'm hitting on threes and fours, and I just roll a completely bog standard average roll. It's you know 3, 4, 5, and a 1. So it's three hits, but because she's rolling so many grudges, those are all three crits. And because I'm running the plasma beamer and I had the extra inch of movement because I'm moving and dashing with Ancestors Watching, I can also drop a line from Vayne onto the assassin who's standing behind her, and I'm able to drop Vayne and the assassin, two priority threats, because the assassin then gets 3d3 mortal wounds from the beam.
Yeah.
So it's moments like that you can you turn around like got him, found the beam, got the line,
Hmm.
and those are the kind of moments it's why you're playing dwarves is for the special.
Yeah, I mean that's just amazing. Something similar happened at Atlanta, where somebody like lined up like the ultra like four mortal wounds or 4d3 mortal wounds on like three different guys with a beam, and it was just crazy. And I know especially one of the few games I've played with Hearthkyn was against Starstriders, and I know how much of a pain that assassin can be for them. So I'm sure that felt amazing getting that model just deleted off the board.
Yeah.
So I guess on the topic of, I wanted to talk about matchups a little bit. So um, not necessarily talking about, obviously commandos are a struggle for a lot of teams, but I guess from a playstyle perspective, what types of teams do you find that Hearth can do well into, and what types of teams do you think that they struggle a little bit more against?
You really with the dwarves, you really don't have solid options against them, against teams that can shoot and fight. Because if they can come forward and they can tie you down, most of the time you're swinging fists. You know, there are people who are proponents of the plasma knife, spending their EP on it. I don't rate the plasma knife at all. Um, because generally, if you're swinging a knife, you're already in a bad spot. You've already made a mistake somewhere. But if a team is able to get, cults is real tough. Um, just because they can dump a melee threat basically anywhere on the board. Um, Harlequins, absolute nightmare. You really don't have much you can do there.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, teams that are faster and teams that can fight. Um, I haven't played dwarves in the Corsairs. Dwarves and the thought of playing dwarves in the Corsairs is scary. And Commandos goes with mentioning because Commandos can just do it all.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, definitely. So it sounds like teams that are fast and teams that hit hard in melee are kind of the scariest thing for you guys, which makes a lot of sense. Um, and what about how do you feel like let's talk about elites because as a legionnaire player myself, I found that Votan, especially against elites, because you can really stack the grudges really easily, and they just have so many AP weapons. Do you find that to be a favorable matchup for you?
Yeah, any of the elite matches, you're doing pretty well. The hardest the elite matches is probably Phobos, just because they can do
Hmm.
so much with each activation, and they can manipulate which of your dudes gets to act first, which usually gives them enough time to stall out and do what they want to do. But Legion operatives fold like paper cranes
Hmm.
unless they're Zinch. You're always just rolling dice into dice at that point.
Right.
But no, the Legion are no big deal. Intercession squad, you could just you can show them a bit of time. Um,
Hmm. Well, makes a lot of sense.
yeah, custodians is always a dice fight. But yeah, you're with the Hearthkin, your matches into elites are generally pretty good.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so I guess one thing I wanted to touch on a little bit. I mean, you mentioned the knives earlier, but what are to you when you've seen other Votan players, or even harkening back to when you were still learning the faction? What are some of the most common mistakes that you see like newer Votan players pick up and make?
Um, a very common mistake there's really two mistakes that you constantly see in new Votan players. One, it's that they think the Thane is actually supposed to do anything. And the Thane in its current iteration, it does what it does. They can hand out grudges in return. But an operative with 9 wounds that hits on threes, that's your leader, just isn't impressive. And
Hmm.
if you lose it too early, then you lose a lot of control over where your grudges go, which is basically game over. Um, and then the other mistake you make is thinking that the melee weapons on either of the two melee specialists are for anything but show. Like the jump pack warrior is absolutely essential to the game plan. It's really your only piece that can reliably reach a mission objective and play it. And they went through the trouble of giving it a plasma axe. But if you're ever swinging the plasma axe, you're not using the jump pack warrior for what it's for, which is an absolute bummer. Really cool to swing plasma axe, always a mistake. And
Hmm.
then ever taking the dozer is always a mistake.
Okay,
Which
so
is
not a fan of the
I
dozer.
think the dozer is the coolest model in all of Kill Team, but it's just bad.
He's a very cool looking guy. I mean, he's got like power knuckles.
Well, yeah, it's imagine going out to face the eldritch horrors of the multiverse and then saying, I need to leave at home, my shirt sleeves.
All right, very interesting. Cool. Okay. So I guess quickly, because a lot of this, for a lot of teams, this is kind of a binary choice, but I think Votin have a little more thought to put into this. But what do you like to do for TAC ops typically?
What you have for tac ops right now, it's settle grudges. It's one of those few faction tac ops that's generally pretty reliable. You have to score it in 3 rounds in order to max it, which is, kind of a bummer, but it's generally, if you're not killing an operative you want to kill in each of the 4 rounds of the game, you're probably having a bad game. And then most of the time it's just recon. Um, if you've got 2 vantages you can reach, this is the example of where your jump pack warrior needs to be flying around and doing its thing. Then vantage is good. So recover item is just too good right now. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised to see that get changed whenever they get around to doing credit ups 2024 or whatever. Recover item is insanely good. Almost always 2 points. plant transponder you can do with your lugger and with your jump pack warrior. You could there's security is your other option, and security just isn't really
Okay.
it's hard to play.
Makes sense. Okay. I've gotten that a lot. I found a lot of players are not a huge fan of security. So all right. So I mean we're kind of reaching the end here. Um so I wanted to ask you, the last year I asked this question slightly differently, but it's maybe the most important question of the interview. So last year I asked what their favorite Christmas song was. This year I'm asking each and every one of you, what is your favorite Christmas movie if you have one?
Oh my goodness. Christmas movies. Let's see.
There's a lot.
It's difficult. I haven't watched like, a Christmas movie in so long, but
Yeah.
probably if I'm gonna call out a Christmas movie, it's probably any of the old the old dinosaur grandpa claymation movies.
Okay.
Old Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, old
Nice.
Frosty the Snowman. You could not pay me enough money to go back and watch them because there's probably like eldritch coded racism baked into it somewhere. But I remember them fondly enough that those have to be where you have to get on.
Yeah. No, I mean they're definitely classics. I'm really enjoying getting the answers on these because there's been a lot of different answers, and I think you're the first one to bring those up. Um, so thank you for that. But again, Eldon, thank you for coming on at all and talking to me about Votan. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you finally. Um, Thank you to everybody watching, the subscribers, the Patreon people. You guys rock. Tomorrow, join us for the 10th day of Kill Team, and we're going to be talking about an old favorite of mine, the Wormblade. So, this is, in the meantime, Shane and Eldon signing out.
Thanks so much for taking the time. You have a nice day.